Greetings, Blender heads! Welcome to another episode of Blender for All. In this episode, I ask a simple question. How do we keep the scene clean? Blender is a very powerful program, and it can handle a lot of information which could, in turn, become easily disorganized. However, with a little bit of housekeeping, catastrophes can be avoided, scenes can be easily searched, and conflicts can be eliminated.
In this episode, you will learn how to set up naming guides for the project, group things together, link and append information, manage file size. Let's look at this scene where we have this mushroom object. So as you can see, we have a mushroom, but take a look at the label. It says circle on it, doesn't it? So we need to change that, because if we were to duplicate this object, let's do Shift D, then we have circle.001. We don't want that, because when we're working with other team members or when we're trying to find stuff ourselves, if we have a large complicated scene, we're not going to want a bunch of objects that have the name circle in them. This is really important, because when we go into our outliner, well, then we can actually do a search right here. If we just scroll this over, if we have this search bar, we try and find mushroom, we're not going to find any results. So what we'll do is we will rename these objects. So let's get rid of this by pressing X or delete, whichever you want to do. So let's right click, select this one. And now, what we're going to do is we're going to expand this panel. Here we go. Right now, if we go into our data setting right here, we have circle, object settings, circle. Let's change that. Mushroom. There we go. And now, we hit enter, we're good. Now we have that, so now we have a mushroom. But if we go into our data settings, still says circle. So we need to hover over this, press Control C, and then go into our object data settings. There we go. Rather, our mesh data settings. So that'll be the first thing that we do. So here is how we can organize our scene. And now, when we do Shift D, X, just on the X-axis, there we go. Then we have mushroom.001. This is a good thing. It shows in our mesh data, and it shows in our object data. That is how we get this to be organized. So then we can just keep duplicating. There we go. Shift D. X, and then we can do as many as we want, and then obviously you don't want to crash your computer here or anything. Then we can go into our search, mushroom, if I spell it right. There we go. And now you can pull this over. Okay, here we go. And here we go. And now look at all these mushroom objects we have. Pretty cool, huh? So it is very important to keep your scene clean and make sure that you don't have any data that is not correct. Otherwise, you're going to have a big mess. If you're working with a team, they're not going to know what to do, and you're not going to know what to do either, because you won't be able to search it yourself. So housekeeping is important. Keep it clean, people. Now we're going to duplicate, or rather we're going to group this stuff together. We're going to make this stuff work so that we have some really cool things with grouping. I'm going to show you how this is done. So first of all, we have these 4 mushrooms. I'm just going to do a couple of things just to make these mushrooms a bit different. And then I'm going to group them together and show you some of the procedures we do. So first of all, we have this mushroom that has all these materials on it. And we can rename these really quickly. So mushroom dot 001. Now I'll just make that 002. However makes sense for you, that's what you want to do. There we go. Alright, and then we can start adding in new mushroom materials. So all these have the same material now if we go through. Everything's the same. So if we were to change one of these mushrooms with the colors, for example, then all of them would change. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So we go in to our material setting. Okay, so that was just fine, just right there. Now you're not able to see it right there, but if we Control C, Control V on our colors. Okay, that one you can't really, okay, there we go. It's on the underside of the mushroom there. So if we Control Z, there we go. A couple times, there we go. So we have some different colors. We can do the same thing for this. Let's make this red. Okay, there we go. Oh, geez, look at that. Okay, so all of them changed color. We don't want that. Then what we'll do is on this mushroom, we'll make this a single user. There we go. Same thing here. And then this mushroom gets its own colors. There we go. Do the same thing for this. And I'm just kind of monkeying around here. But basically, you get the idea on how these kind of work. So now we got that. Do the same thing for this one. Single user, single user, single user. There we go. And we'll just change these colors around so that we have some different objects that we can go with. So do the same thing for all these objects. And in fact, here we go. So we're starting to get all these different colors. Okay. There we go. Alright, so all I'm doing is just, of course, changing the different colors. This is definitely going to be trippy with these mushrooms, isn't it? Magic mushrooms. Alright, now we have all these different mushrooms. We can group them together, and in fact we can even rotate them in different ways as well. R, Z, and then I want to keep them so that they're at the same rotation as 0 rotation for all of them. So we'll do Shift A, sorry that's not the right one, Control A, rotation. Do the same thing for this, RZ, so rotating on the Z axis, Control A, rotation, last one, and I know I'm getting a bit lazy just doing it this way. I could do a little bit more alteration, but I don't really want to, just for time interest. And so we'll take a look at these. Now, I also want to get these so that they are all at 0, 0, 0. And then we're going to group them all together. But first, actually, I'm going to take this and I'm going to do the group. So go ahead and we'll do Control G, and we'll name this mushrooms, or mushroom patch, however you want to do this. Okay. And then let's do Shift G, Control G. Sorry about that. It's been a while since I've done this. Alt G. That's what it was. So my apologies, it's been a while. Okay, there we go. Now we have it all. So all these objects, yes, they're all clumped together. It does look pretty hideous, doesn't it? But we're going to create a new scene, and I'm going to show you what we're going to do on that. So I'm just going to pause it for a moment, and we're going to make a new scene. Alright, now let's look at this scene. And what we have is we have a bunch of mushrooms, and we have them all grouped, correct? Yes, there we go. And of course there's that light I just selected. So these mushrooms, because they're grouped, we could do some really cool things now. So we're going to add a new scene, and we're going to show you what we can do with these mushrooms that are now grouped. I'm going to name this to Field. Alright, now that I've named this to Field, let's add a plane. So we'll do Shift A, plane. We'll tab into edit mode, S for scale, 8 times up, there we go. And then what we're going to do is we're going to subdivide this a few times. Let's see, there we go. Alright, then that'll get us, oops, let's see, that last one, okay, there we go. Subdivide. Alright, now let's tab out of edit mode, and I'm going to change the name of this object, because right now it's at plane. Let's change it to Field. I'll Control C while I'm hovering over that, and I'll do the same thing here. Now it's a field. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do a particle system. This particle system we will do plus sign, and we're going to rename this to mushrooms, or mushroom, yeah, we'll do that. Now we will Control C over that, Control V, there we go. And now what we're going to do is we're going to change this from an emitter type to a hair type. Now look at all those hairs coming out of the plane. Alright, so we have an emitter. So what can we do with this now that we've got these mushrooms? Well, we need to change them to mushrooms, and we're going to go into our hair settings. Let's see, we're going to go to render. We're going to change it from path to group. This group we're going to change to mushrooms. There we go. And now we have this group that is really cool. But I don't want that many mushrooms. I want to take it down to, say, 100. Isn't that cool, though, how we're able to take that group of mushrooms and just scatter them all over the plane? It beats having to do each of these models individually and duplicating them all over the place. It's just done. So that is one really cool thing about doing grouping. So now that we've learned that, there are other things that we can do with it. We can change settings such as, if it's random, if any types of things that we want to do, and it's all done on the fly, and it's not destructive in any way. That is what's really cool about grouping objects and then adding them as a particle system. So object groups are very cool. Now we're going to talk about linking and appending. So first of all, I've gone into a new scene completely. Nothing new other than it's just the cube, the lamp, and the camera. That's all it is. So what we're going to do is we're going to delete this cube, X for delete, and now we're going to go into File, and we're going to go to Link first. So linking a file, what it does is it provides an external reference for you to go to so that you can have stuff. And let's see, I need to go up a directory here. Okay, and then we go into our organization folder. We're going to open up this mushroom.blend. Now, in that, you have all these folders right here. Now, I'm going to open up an object here, and we're going to link this. We're going to get that field that we created, and it's going to have all those mushrooms taken care of. Now, we're going to link this right now, and voila, there it is. So, now you have this object, it's selected, but notice if you try and press G to move it around, it doesn't do anything. And so that is by design here that you have this linked file, it doesn't do anything. Now if you take a look at an appended file, that is different because what you end up doing is that you bring in a local copy. Now you can do a proxy local copy of a linked file, but I'm not going to go into detail about that. So there's a linked file, and it's really good to have for if you have someone who's making backgrounds or things that you don't want to really move in the scene. And yes, you can have objects where, yes, they can move and all that. But again, we'll save that for another lesson. So now I'm going to append another object. So I'm going to go into my file here for a character. So I'm going to get out of this. I'm going to go into my library. And I'm going to get one of my Sniggle characters. I'm going to get Stanley. Alright, so we go into group is where I want to do this one because it has an actual armature that's rigged. So if we append this from the library, then we have Stanley in there. And now this one, if you press G, you can move it around. Not Z, so Shift Z. I'm going to move this over here. There we go. And then since I have the armature selected, if I do Control Tab, eventually, Control Tab, there we go. Then I can do a few things where I have normal setup and I have rotate and okay, so shift select these, rotate and scale, all according to what someone else has already done, in this case me. And now we have a scene where we have the background set up, and no, you can't do anything with it because you haven't done the proxy or anything, but here it is, and then we have an appended object, and there we go. So this is the difference between linking and appending. This is going to be a local copy for this appended object, and it's not going to be affecting anything in the base model at all. And so that's the difference between linking and appending. Now let's take a look at the last part of this episode, managing file size. In Blender, one of the big things that happens when we're trying to do our scenes is we're trying to make things look as visually appealing as possible. Well, in the process, a lot of times we end up using way too many objects or polygon counts or whatever the case may be. In this case, we're going to look at two mushrooms. The two of them are pretty similar, but you can definitely tell up close that this one has a lot less detail than this one. If we were to tab into edit mode, take a look at the number of polygons on this. We look at this, we have 1,122 faces. In contrast, let's tab out of edit mode and then tab into this one. This one has 18,176 faces. That's a very big difference right there. Right there, we have essentially 18 times the amount of faces as we do on this one. So, I tried to keep the polygon count low for both of these so that I could just show you a quick render and just show you kind of the difference between the two. Now, if we have this really close-up picture, F12, we render, you can definitely see a difference. This one is much more smooth. You don't notice as many faces on this, so it looks a lot more natural. Whereas this one, you can definitely tell I cheaped out on the polygon count. Now, let's take the same scene, but with a camera that's much further back. You take a look at the two mushrooms there. It's much harder to notice the difference between the two of them. if we render this, you really have to zoom in to see any type of difference in detail or anything. Even that's pretty hard to see it. You can kind of see it, but it's really not that noticeable. Now, let's say you have a whole bunch of these objects in the scene. Then, well, for one, if you have one object that's going to just kind of have some jagged edges, but it's really small in the scene, and it's blending in with a bunch of the other objects, is it really worth it to crank up the detail level to something like this when it's that far back? In all honesty, you're going to be better off if you just keep it to a lower polygon count if you're going to have more objects. But if you have a closer level of detail, then it's worth it to use this one that has much higher level of detail. Because with the amount of detail that goes into these, this takes up memory resources. So ultimately, if you have a lot of objects, lower the polygon count. If you have fewer objects and you're going to be closer in, then you definitely want to increase the polygon count so that you get that perfect balance between memory usage and visual appeal. So in this episode, we've gone over project organization. First, we've set up a naming convention for each of our objects. Second, we've learned how to do groups so that we can group them and put them into, we can organize them, we can bundle them together, and we can do things such as put them into particle systems, all types of cool things. Third, we use that naming convention to link and append files so that if there are other people who are on the team with you, that they could use your files, and they could use them effectively and they could find them easily. And then last, we talked about managing file size to make sure that your scene is getting the perfect balance between how big the file is versus how visually appealing it is. So, I look forward to any questions or comments that you may have. I really enjoyed making this episode, and I hope that you enjoyed watching this and that you learned something new from this. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to sharing with you next time.
Hey everyone, if you liked Blender for All, check out more of our episodes by subscribing for new content, or go to shemble.com or check out more of our channel. Thanks, have a great day.